It wasn't until I got out of school that I realized how much my own perceptions and beliefs are shaped by society at large, whether that's people I spend time with, like my friends, family, and colleagues, or the media I consume, such as the social media accounts I follow or the TV shows I watch. After becoming aware of these influences, I've deviated from some of the more common recommendations and ways of thinking. What's going on, guys? For those of you who are new here, my name is Kevin Jubal, physician entrepreneur in Las Vegas and former plastic surgery resident. First up, everyone's favorite, politics. I personally do not identify with either political extreme. I think both the far left and the far right have massive flaws in their way of thinking, and I think most things in life, at least when it comes to politics, the truth is somewhere in the middle, at least in most cases. But you'll see a lot of people that really identify with one side or the other, and then they get sucked into this whirlwind of emotions that aligns with their identity and their news media outlet of choice, which is by design because the news media companies make money from your attention, from the clicks, from the shares. And what emotions can they elicit to more likely have that outcome? Turns out it's anger, outrage, a lot of these negative emotions. And the result is that we get more and more polarized as a society. And if you watch the same event being covered by two separate news organizations that are on different sides, for example, Fox News and CNN, talking about the same thing, it's a completely different story, which then just goes to show that, okay, this is not the true unbiased recollection of events. There's this interesting theory on political extremes called horseshoe theory, which essentially states the further extreme you go on the far left and the far right, the more they actually begin to resemble one another, kind of like a horseshoe shape. And there's a link to that Wikipedia article down in the description. Number 2 is shaving. Now, I remember seeing those ads growing up. You got Gillette with this 3-4 blade cartridges, and there was even one that had like power and it would vibrate. And I remember when I was in high school, the first time I shaved with that Gillette razor, felt like a man. But the problem is shaving in this method is usually going to result in a very suboptimal shave. There are a lot of problems with this way of shaving. So for example, the shaving cream that comes from a can is going to be very drying. It's not hydrating enough. And the multi-blade cartridges, they get blunt really quickly and they're really expensive. So we end up using them more than we should. And it overall just results in a suboptimal shave. In med school, I found out about wet shaving, which is the old-fashioned way of shaving. I use a double-edged razor, which uses these blades that are sharp on both sides. They're super cheap, on the order of cents per blade, like 5 or 10 cents. And you put it in your razor, you have a brush that you use to build up a lather from a hard soap, and you rub that on your face rather than the very drying shaving cream from a can. And overall, it's just a much better shave. And if you want to take it to the next level, you can get a pre-shave cream that you put on before you shave. And then after you shave, you have alum block, which really helps with any irritation and nicks, and also aftershave, of course. And by doing all this, shaving is actually kind of fun now, which I never thought I would say, because you're trying out these different scents and these different soaps, you're trying different razors, and you're finessing your technique. It's like driving stick in that way, where you get pretty good, you get pretty proficient, but there's always that little element of skill and technique that you're trying to refine, trying to perfect, and that constant pursuit of perfection and improvement is rewarding. Now, if budget is a concern, as it was for me back when I was in med school, you can get a full setup for $50 to $75. That includes a cheap Omega boar hairbrush, cheap blades, a cheap razor, and that's pretty much all you need to get started. I'll have links to the ones I've used or recommend down in the description. And I had a budget setup like this for the last 7 years, but earlier this year I decided to #treat yourself, and I upgraded to a much nicer boar hair brush, nicer razor blades, nicer pre-shave, aftershave, which is not necessary, but again, I'll link to all of those down in the description. Number 3 is alcohol. Growing up, I thought alcohol was necessary to have fun at parties. It's what my parents did, it's what society at large kind of suggests, and it is a social lubricant. It makes for more fun. And I was drinking more alcohol than I should have, honestly, early on in college. But then I got sick with IBD, and because of the medications, they were hard on my liver, etc., I couldn't drink alcohol anymore. But obviously I still wanted to socialize and still go to parties, and I did that early on in college, but I didn't have a drop of alcohol. And I found it actually kind of awkward and not pleasant because I was too much in my head. I wasn't as free and loose as I would normally be with some alcohol. But it wasn't until later that I realized there's nothing inherently special about alcohol in getting me to that state. I can actually just transport myself there to this carefree, fun-loving, happy, positive vibe state where I don't really care what people think, and I don't need a substance to get me there. And once I understood that, alcohol had much less appeal. In fact, this is now the end of 2020, and I've literally drank alcohol 3 times this year, which admittedly is partly due to the state of the world and not really socializing as much, but I've just lost a lot of interest in drinking alcohol over the last several years. I'm now 30, and let me tell you, even in your late 20s, hangovers get so much worse. In fact, even during drinking now, so not even the next day with a hangover, but during drinking now, I may sometimes have headaches or just not feel as good, whereas that was never an issue in my early 20s. So here in Vegas, no one really goes to the Strip if they're a local, except when friends visit. So then you definitely go to the Strip, and we'd go to, XS or whatever club, and music's playing, and most of my friends, they want alcohol, right? So that's cool, have your alcohol. But they would refuse to dance with me until they had alcohol. So I'd just be there like sober, doing my thing, having a good time. And it's really liberating when you can do that and not really care and not feel like you need alcohol as a crutch to get you loose and having a good time. If you just understand that people don't care about you, we have the spotlight effect. We think people care about us more than they really do, or that they're paying more attention than they really are. When you realize no one cares, they're just worrying about themselves. And if you just have a good time and spread some positive vibes, it's gonna be okay. So yeah, if you see a random guy dancing by himself at a club in Vegas, that might be me. Number 4 is the image of success that society pushes. And that's that successful people have German luxury cars, they fly first class, they have designer clothes, fancy shoes, whatever, fill in the blank. That's nonsense. There's a difference between enjoying a certain product because of the quality, craftsmanship, etc., versus enjoying it because of the perceived social status boost that it provides. And the hard part is being honest with yourself as to which one it is. Now, I'm definitely not someone that thinks that you should spend your life being as frugal as possible and pinching every penny to save money, because that's not the meaning of life. But living beyond your means for a perceived social status boost to impress people that you probably don't really care about that much is a very silly way to live. It's much better to focus on financial security, financial independence, and that freedom it gives you is so much more worthwhile. It's no secret, I am a massive car nerd. Some of my earliest memories from when I was 3 and 4 are related to cars. And I love driving, I love a well-crafted automobile, I love thoughtful design and engineering. I love everything about cars and that experience. And I think a lot of people, particularly in medicine, right? They've worked so hard. They think that, hey, I got through med school, now I'm in residency, or maybe they just finished residency. Hey, I'm an attending now, I deserve to treat myself. And they'll buy the German luxury car, is usually the stereotype. And it's because, hey, I'm successful and I deserve this. But wouldn't you be just as happy with a Lexus? It's way more reliable, it's gonna be oftentimes a little bit cheaper, and it may not have the same badge prestige, but it's still really luxurious and a really pleasant experience. And sure, a lot of German cars, they have better driving dynamics, but out of those people that go that route, how many of them actually enjoy it for that reason? Again, going back to that earlier statement about being honest with yourself, is it the enjoyment of the product or is it the social status and prestige? I'm 30 years old and I'm driving a 7.5-year-old Scion FRS. And to be honest, the badge never bothered me. Well, the badge did bother me because it should be Toyota, not Scion, so I actually rebadged mine to Toyota. But that's another story about the whole heritage, and I'm not gonna bore you with that. But the car is just so much fun to drive, and that's why I keep it. It's actually surprisingly practical too. And back when I was single, yeah, I was going on dates in this car, and no girl ever made a comment about, oh, like drive a Toyota? So not cool. And even if they did, that girl just wouldn't be the right one for me, because I don't wanna date someone that has that kind of value system. And number 5 is that success is defined financially. When considering different careers, a lot of people just focus on the bottom line, how much money they're gonna be making, as if that is the ultimate most important metric that they should be focusing on. I mean, if you go on the Fat Fire subreddit, for example, you'll see a lot of younger people asking questions about that. Now, money is incredibly important. There are a lot of people that do this whole virtue signaling about saying that I don't want money, money's bad, and I'm a good person, I prioritize being good. The two aren't mutually exclusive. You can want money and be successful, etc., and be morally sound. Now, money is useful, but it makes a terrible god if you worship it. Now, on one extreme, I'm not one to say that you should be a starving artist and just follow your passion. I made a video on the Med School Insiders channel about my thoughts on following your passion and why I don't think that's necessarily good advice. But on the other extreme, if you could make $500K a year selling toilets, but you hated toilets, I probably don't think that you should do that either. There's a balance to living a comfortable life and enjoying your work and finding meaning in it. Now, doctors make a lot of money. They're very high W-2 earners, and they help people, so they have meaning in their work. Yet you still find a lot of them are burned out or depressed. And depending on the survey, that that rate is incredibly high. Sometimes it's number 1 or number 2 compared to all other professions. And we can talk about the issues within medicine, the lack of time, lack of autonomy, the bureaucratic sludge that gets worse and worse, the charting, etc. But that doesn't mean it's actually a bad profession. I think a lot of people end up being miserable in medicine because they're going into it for the wrong reasons. So they see the large amount of money that they can make and they think that's a really good choice for them, but they don't consider the other aspects of what's going to make them happy. You'll see those doctors really miserable and hating their life and telling others, hey, don't pursue medicine, it's a terrible choice. But then you'll see other doctors, and a lot of my friends from med school, for example, they're now attendings and they're super happy with their choice and they love their life being physicians. Now, I also know someone who makes very good money every year, but he's spoken with me about not having the meaning because he doesn't feel like he's really doing much. He could be doing more with his talent and his efforts and do more to change the world or help other people. So in my mind, there are 3 things that I aim for when considering success, at least as it relates to my professional life. There's success with personal life, which is a different discussion. One would be financial security and financial freedom, which comes from both a high income as well as a high savings rate and intelligent investments. Number 2 is meaning, which largely comes from helping others and feeling that I'm making the world a better place in at least a small way. And number 3 is enjoyment, which I think a huge part of comes from constantly learning and exploring. And that may be part of the reason why I'm constantly jumping from one company to the next and doing various things, because learning is so fun and so rewarding. Now, what about you? What are some common societal narratives that you have chosen to reject? If you enjoyed this video, you'll enjoy my video on what I would do differently if I could redo my 20s, or my thoughts on medical school and Adderall. Much love, and I'll see you guys there.